Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Tammy. I am the chair of the Oxford Africa Business Alliance. Today's session is really going to be focusing on our Africa Focus and initiative at the business school, as well as the Oxford MBA program and how we support more students from the continent looking to apply, and that's additional through scholarships and career opportunities. So just a bit of housekeeping. You're going to be hearing from a few current Oxford MBA students from Africa towards the end of this webinar, so you won't be having to listen to my voice the whole time. They'll be able to share some of their Oxford experiences with you. And then there's also an opportunity for you to ask any questions. So you'll see there's a question section in the webinar tab. Feel free to send questions sort of as you think of them. If I'm able to address them immediately, I will. Otherwise, I will ensure we save some time both with the students and with myself to answer any questions. If we're unable to get through all the questions, we will make sure that we follow up with them separately. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the next hour also of our time together. So if everybody could hear me, could you just kindly send through yes on the question box? That would be helpful. Great. Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. Lots of yeses coming through. Great, thanks so much. Okay, so as you should be able to see on your screens, is a photo of the Dean of the Business School, Peter Tafano, as well as with some of our African students from a few years ago, so from 2 years ago. These are not all the African students, but what I did want to show you was that we have a large proportion of our class coming from Africa. In 2014, the Dean of the Business School made a pledge to have at least 10% of our class coming from Africa. Now, you may or may not think that that's a big number, but to put that into context, on average, only 2% of all MBA students globally are from Africa. If you look at most international business schools, they will either hover around the 1 or 2%, and some get around to about 4%. Historically, ourselves, we used to only have between 4 and 6% of our class coming from Africa. So why did we set this big task for ourselves to have 10% of our class coming from the continent? And on reflection, we felt that 2% is not a reflection of the talent on the continent, and neither is it a reflection of the percentage of business that will be done in Africa in 10 years, 5 years, or 20 so years. So for us, we really felt that in order to both get ahead of that curve, as well as to be able to support the amazing talent that we know that exists on the continent, we felt we had to be a lot more aggressive in ensuring that we were able to support and identify talented candidates to come on the program. So we are very proud to have had actually more than 10% of our class coming from Africa for the last 3 years. So the current class is the 3rd year with more than 10% of the class. Within that, we have over 12 African nationalities represented, as well as a large percentage of women. So we ensure that we have diversity in country representation from North Africa down to Southern Africa, as well as a very broad spectrum of sectors and backgrounds and interests of our African students. We're also very focused on ensuring that we support candidates to return to Africa. We do not want to be seen as a school that, drains that talent from the continent and does not have a positive impact on the continent. So, we do ensure that we create opportunities, whether you're looking to do your own startup or you're looking to go and work for a corporate organization, we ensure that we are able to create and support those opportunities for you to be able to return to Africa. Having said that, we also recognize that for some individuals, it is important to get a few years international experience perhaps, and be able to return to your home country and to be able to bring that experience back with you. So some of our African students do remain in Europe or other parts of the world, but there again, we also support our alumni that have been out for a couple of years looking to return back to Africa. So this slide focuses on our Africa focus, and as I mentioned, we have more than 10%. So this in the current class, we have 11% of our class coming from Africa. So that is 40 African students physically in the classroom. And our initiative goes all the way from recruitment right through as to an alum of the business school. There's a number of initiatives that happen during the MBA program itself as well. So to give you a quick overview, our recruitment means that we travel predominantly across the continent on a monthly basis, meeting and identifying, as I said, really high potential candidates that are looking to come on the program. We have provided support around GMAT prep, which I can chat a bit about a little bit later, as well as ensuring that you are, mentored with alumni or with the admissions committee, and really try and give you a bespoke service when it comes to the admissions process. It has also meant that we have created a number of dedicated African scholarships. And I will, at the very end of this webinar, I'll show you a slide on all the different scholarships that are available. But more than 60% of our African students every year receive some form of scholarship from the business school or the university directly. And we've recognized that the financial need can often be a barrier to considering an international program and one such as Oxford. But it also, we know, enables people to be able to make that move a lot easier to return to the continent if you don't have the international financial burden of those fees. So the scholarships for us have been really significant, but I'll chat a bit more about that later. On the program, as I mentioned, there's a number of different ways where you can either engage with the broader African community, both in Oxford and the UK, as well as those based in Africa. We have created the Oxford Africa Business Alliance, which I chair. That was created to formalize this initiative at the business school. So it is jointly led and managed between the business school and the student group, so the African MBA students on the program. And we work on a number of different initiatives through events and speakers, as well as different workshops, mentoring schemes, working on development and fundraising. And as alumni, they will continue to work on those different engagement pieces and also create a very well-connected alumni network on the continent. And as I've mentioned, you can see on there, we have a number of alumni chapters. So that is fast growing. We have a number of formal chapters, as well as more informal chapters where they are ambassador-led. And we are really wanting to ensure that we can work both with the MBA students on the program as well as the wider business school and Oxford University alumni that are based in Africa to look at different career opportunities, to look at networking opportunities if you're looking at startups or wanting to do business across different sectors. We have, within the teaching part of it, we do a number of Africa-focused electives. Just for the MBA cohort alone, we have 3 dedicated African teaching modules. One is an international elective that takes place in an African country each year, as well as 2 other local electives. So those are hosted in Oxford every year. One focuses on growth prospects and business opportunities in Africa. So if you're particularly interested in investing in Africa within that kind of private equity space, impact investing, as well as being able to just understand markets and where to look to be able to do business and really be able to navigate the challenges within Africa, that elective is very useful. About 60 MBA students travel out to Africa each year for that, and we work with a number of companies that have expanded successfully across the continent. The other 2 electives focus on entrepreneurship and shared value in Africa. So for those of you that are looking to do startups or have an existing startup in Africa, it's really valuable on understanding, the African market, how to work both in the governance space and the private sector, and really how to navigate the challenges that you would be able to identify in each different market. So it's not focused on just one country itself. And then the final elective is doing business in Africa. And this is very useful again, and many of the electives are, but useful for a lot of non-Africans that have very little insight into working in Africa. And it really gives them insight into the opportunities, cultural sort of influences, how to understand markets, fluctuations, and things that definitely impact how you physically do business in Africa. And this really summarizes why we are doing what we do in terms of focusing on having more and a critical number of African students on the program. And that is really to educate the non-Africans about the opportunities on the continent. And there's a lot of research that goes into, really understanding what critical mass does to changing perceptions and views of certain populations or sectors. And so having 10% of our class coming from Africa, it really gives a voice to what it is really like to be an African and doing business in Africa, and how to really navigate the challenges as opposed to simply seeing, Africa as perhaps of a challenge in and of itself. So we try and rather equip students to understand and identify opportunities and to navigate challenges in Africa. And it spreads over to both the non-Africans as well as Africans. Again, throughout the year, there's a number of different initiatives that we run. We have a number of different distinguished speakers and events that come through. Our most notable event is the Oxford Business Forum Africa, where a number of thought leaders and guest speakers will come to Oxford to talk about, again, opportunities and how to do business in Africa. When looking at the Africa Forum in a bit more detail, it's an annual forum that runs in March every year. It's in close partnership with the MBA students. So as an MBA student, you will have opportunity to actually work on this forum, share insights into the themes and topics, guest speakers. But we really want this forum to be an opportunity for our African students to be able to engage with some of these thought leaders and really to understand certain markets, be able to network, create opportunities for careers. And so this forum is in its 11th year, and it's only grown from strength to strength. It's hosted predominantly in the Nelson Mandela Lecture Theatre, as you can see on your screens. This lecture theatre was actually opened by Nelson Mandela himself back in 2002. And so it's a very special place for us, and it's the largest lecture theatre in the university. As an MBA student, you actually wouldn't host your actual lectures in here. It's mainly used for big events and for a number of large-scale sort of lectures that the whole class would be involved in. But it's a beautiful lecture theatre, and the forum is a huge success. So this year's theme was focused on the new free trade agreement and the impact that this free trade agreement would have in terms of investing in Africa, infrastructure, driving agriculture, opportunities, all those type of things. So we tend to focus on set themes, so you can really get insights into something topical as to something, just broad on Africa. You can see we had a range of speakers. Every year the speakers tend to change. We had Hakeem Bello Asagi, Yvonne Ike, who's the managing director for Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, who was also actually a sponsor. We had Mr. Ige Umukwede and Arunma Ote, who is the former treasurer of the World Bank and is actually now spending a year at Oxford at the business school as an executive in residence. And she's been a phenomenal source of input for our African students, looking, to really create new networks and opportunities, share insights into her time in really working on the continent. We had Ms. Vera Songwe, who actually essentially wrote the free trade agreement. So to have her on the day was phenomenal, to really give us direct insight into what this free trade agreement was created for, how it is really going to shape Africa over the next few years. And so we were really pleased to hear that it's actually been formally ratified. But having her sharing her insights was absolutely amazing. Previous forums, and these are just a bit of snapshots, we've had Dr. Mo Ibrahim join us. We've had Colin Coleman, Managing Director of Goldman Sachs for Sub-Saharan Africa. We've had Puti, and you can see Yvonne in the same photo. Kanye Glomo, also well-known South African businesswoman. And the forum has always been sort of a great opportunity for us to showcase a range of people. But we also recognize that there are times to have individual conversations and individual sessions with different business leaders and essentially leaders of countries. And we all know in Africa that the role of the public and private sector are so intertwined, and to be able to do business on the continent, very often you also have to understand the governance policies and regulations that are around there. So a number of our speakers, and these are just a couple of highlights, throughout the year have included a few heads of state as well, or former heads of state. So President Kagame, this was actually in Rwanda at the opening of the new UGHE, it's a new university focusing on medicine. One of our professors, Peter Drobak, who's the director of the Skoll Center, he's also the executive director of Partners in Health in Rwanda. And we had the opening of this university in Rwanda. We had the current president of Ghana, Nana Akufo-Addo, and he had a very large audience speaking about education in Ghana. They've just fairly recently introduced, as you might know, some free education systems for different individuals, and so he really recognizes the role of education and being able to drive Africa's prosperity. Here are students with the Vice President of Nigeria, on one of their student treks. They also went to the African Development Bank, and we also hosted Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and you could also, who's the former Finance Minister of Nigeria, and you can also see in the picture, for those of you who know, we also had the former President of Ghana, John Kafur. So that was a phenomenal session, and this session was actually both a school-wide, university-wide lecture, but as well as that, we had an opportunity for our students to really be able to speak one-on-one. And in the background, you can see some of our MBA students that were able to have about an hour or so. And generally, with all these different business leaders and country leaders, we're able to ensure that you as students would have those opportunities to really be able to engage and have insightful conversations with some of these people we're able to bring. This was the President of Botswana, President Masisi. He gave a lecture and really spoke on how Botswana is diversifying their industry and stepping away from diamonds, which was really interesting. And actually just last week, Friday, we had another former president of Ghana, John Mahama, in conversation with the director of the African Studies Center, and he's also planning to run for president election again this year. So we work very closely with a range of different departments throughout the university. So it's really important for your network, especially if you're really interested in making sure you continue to develop those ties with Africa and doing business in Africa and connecting with individuals that are going to be working in Africa, that you work with other departments. We work with the African Studies Center here at the university, the Blavatnik School of Government, we work with the Africa Society, which is a student-led group, and the Africa Oxford Initiative, which focuses on a number of different university-led initiatives within Africa. So all of these really help support you on your networking and opportunities to connect with others. Looking at some of our alumni, and obviously our alumni work in various different sectors across different industries, countries. However, we do recognize a large proportion of our African students are looking to go and do their own startups post-MBA, even if not immediately, definitely looking, perhaps in 5 years time. And so these are just a couple of our alumni that have had some fairly successful startups. So Mkopa, solar powered energy in Kenya. A lot of you from Kenya will most probably know Mkopa. There's been quite a few case studies done on them as well. And this ability to succeed and really, as well as succeed, have an impact in their country and on the continent. Zuna, again, mobile money. This was founded and started by one of our alumni. And the alumni use a lot of the different opportunities on the program, such as the entrepreneurship projects or different SCPs, to really be able to put forward an opportunity of an idea, whether it's something existing, but they're looking at to scale, or whether it's a completely new startup idea. You can use the MBA year to really be able to test those ideas, build sort of business cases, look at funding, so that you're able to really implement that post-MBA. I drop providing, this is in South Africa, providing clean water as well as profits for companies. So a lot of these startups have very strong impact focuses and obviously contributing to the good of certain communities, but at the same time they are for profit, and that is really what we try and instill here, is that you can do good and do well. It doesn't need to only be that if you're working within an NGO and you're sacrificing sort of an income to be able to have a true impact. We believe that there is an ability to have this positive impact, but at the same time have a successful business, and that is what we try and help shape here at Oxford. There's the Women's Bakery in Rwanda. This was so Julie Green, who's a Skoll Scholar, and it really supports women as well that are looking to upskill themselves. And it's a phenomenal initiative in Rwanda, and again, doing well and doing good. And then Cura Medical, this was co-founded by a Oxford MBA current student, or a student and alum, and it's really changing the face of healthcare in Africa, essentially. But it is stepping away from essentially only providing medical coverage within a hospital, essentially, and looking to provide safe and high quality medical coverage to individuals, essentially, in their home. So you can see quite a broad scope of the different sort of focuses of these alumni. And like I said, this is just a very snapshot, a small snapshot of what our alumni are doing. And that excludes the alumni that are working in finance, or whether it's private equity and impact investing, as well as those that are working in consulting or real estate or marketing, healthcare. So it's very broad. So as I mentioned, we have our international elective, and just very briefly, this is our students with the former president of South Africa, President Motlanthe, and we were at Lily's Leaf, and again, you can see it's a very diverse group of students coming out, and that really lends ourselves to the fact that we're looking at students that, whether you're African or not, are really looking at Africa as an opportunity to both succeed, but also to be able to help support the growth of Africa. We had the CEO and founder of EcoCash travel down from Zimbabwe. EcoCash is the second largest mobile money company in Africa, and really phenomenal to hear from her insights onto how the startup was created and working essentially in a very difficult economy at the moment within Zimbabwe, which is very much my home country. So Zimbabwe and South Africa is essentially where I consider home. So it's definitely great to see sort of the changes that are happening there. And we actually had the finance minister for Zimbabwe as well travel down to talk about sort of the projections for Zimbabwe. So why a one-year MBA? And most of you are here because you are considering doing an MBA, whether that is because you're looking to do a startup, whether you have your own existing startup, whether you're trying to advance your career, whether you are looking to switch your career, switch location, you feel that an MBA is really critical for you. And there's a lot of benefits with a one-year MBA. As you can see, low opportunity costs. You definitely have less time away from your career, so you are able to return a lot quicker and be able to start paying back any international loans if you have any. But it's also the benefits are to really be able to thrive in that sort of intensity. And you'll hear from my students in a bit that will be able to chat about how how intense the program is, but really what you learn and how you are shaped from that experience, being able to really have to work and thrive under that pressure, work with people from completely different sectors and backgrounds and countries. So there's a lot of benefit in that intense one-year program. Looking at the class profile, as you have most probably gathered in your research, it's a very international and diverse classroom makeup. So we have, on average every year, just over about 310 students. We have over 60 nationalities represented, and 93% of our class is international. We have 39% women. Next year, that percentage is looking to be quite a bit over 40%, which we're looking forward to. And most of our students have, on average, 5 years work experience. But I do want to emphasize that that is an average. We have students from completely different backgrounds in terms of the number of years of work experience and the age group as well. So that is just an average. Whether you have 2 years work experience, some of our students have to have up to 18 years work experience. It's more around your reasoning for doing an MBA and why now, more than an actual set number of years work experience. And I'll talk a little bit more about the actual criteria and admissions requirements to be able to get onto the program. The GMAT range, as you can see there, our range is very vast, from 510 to 790. That we include GRE scores as well, but we just convert your GRE to a GMAT. But if you would like more specific numbers on the GRE, I can provide that to you. But as you can see, a very broad range. We're not a school that puts a very strong emphasis on the GMAT being your number one sort of priority to get on the program. We look for well-balanced application. And we do recognize that there are different challenges in different markets, and therefore we look to identify other ways of potentially a successful candidate, whether that's through leadership abilities and the work that you've done in Africa and the contributions that you have made. So looking at this diversity, just a quick snapshot, you can see globally, vast number of students. We have obviously quite a few students from across Asia and North America, but also quite a good representation from Oceania, Latin America, and Europe as well. On average, about 57% of our students end up working in Europe post-MBA, and that's not for African students, just in general for the whole class. But like I said, you literally could choose where you would like to work based on the different career opportunities, as long as you understand that it's a one-year program and it's very challenging and intense, and therefore, you should have a very clear and strong career plan before coming on the program so that you can essentially hit the ground running. So looking at the application requirements, there's a number of different requirements, and we always get asked what separates candidates in terms of what makes a very strong candidate and what essentially makes an average candidate. And it's a difficult question to answer. However, we do have things that sort of allow candidates to demonstrate who they are in a little bit of a more concise way. So as you can see, there's a variety of different application requirements. Everybody needs to have an undergraduate degree to be able to apply. You need to have a minimum of 2 years work experience. Everybody needs to have a GMAT or GRE score. You have to submit 2 essays every year, and you need to have 2 references, preferably professional, and you have to prove your English language proficiency. So that's the minimum requirement for candidates to be able to apply essentially for the program and to be considered. However, to submit a competitive application, this is where sort of different areas can show your strengths. So for an undergraduate degree, generally we look for a 2.1 degree, so that's a second class upper division and above. Again, having said that, we do consider and we do have candidates that don't have a 2.1 and above. If you're unsure of what your degree converts to, you're more than welcome to email the MBA admissions and recruitment team, and would be able to let you know what your degree converts to. And then your professional experience, we say a minimum of 2 years, but what we really are looking for is a clear career progression, being able to demonstrate working on different projects perhaps, being able to perhaps have some international exposure or experience, and that's not necessarily working abroad, but just perhaps working with clients that are based abroad, but it's essentially what value would you bring to a classroom. So your professional experience is extremely useful for the other candidates in the program sitting next to you. And so for us, that's more what we look at, is what value would you bring to the classroom from your experience and being able to contribute to classroom discussions, and essentially how does your current professional experience support your post-MBA plans. So that's when your experience can be quite significant. As I mentioned, the GMAT or GRE score, we accept all ranges. I would recommend that you put as much effort into it, and don't underestimate the GMAT or GRE score. It can be quite a beast. It's not a test of your ability to, succeed in life. Neither does it really test your intelligence, but there are some similarities to your ability to cope on the course through that GMAT or GRE score, whether it's your quant ability, your ability to manage high sort of pressure environments, whether they're time-sensitive exams and such. So don't underestimate it, but don't let the GMAT or GRE put you off from applying or thinking that it's a good enough score to apply. Your 2 essays are really important for you to make sure that you articulate, and what we're looking for in the essays is how well you put forward an argument, your sort of communication style, and so put a lot of work into your essays. Each year the essay topics could change, so I won't go into too much detail around the topic because they are likely to change, but please don't write your essays the night before. They do get read and read by a lot of people, so they really showcase who you are as an individual. References, again, very critical. As I mentioned, 2 professional references are required, if not at least 1 professional, 1 academic. The professional referees should really be able to speak to who you are as an individual. So instead of seniority, look at people that are committed to your future. So if you're unable to tell your line manager or your boss, we completely understand that, but you should be able to get references within that corporate sort of environment, whether it's a previous employer or current employer, and they should be able to speak to certain EQs, who you are as an individual, leadership skills, communication skills, your value to an organization, projects that you've worked on, not just giving a letter stating that you've worked from the state to the state. So somebody that is prepared to invest in writing a very comprehensive letter of recommendation. And then lastly, the English language proficiency. That really talks to not so much your ability to speak English, it's more the formal requirement, and that is both for the university and for the UK visa agency, essentially. So if you are from a non-speaking African country and you have not done a degree from an English-speaking country as listed by the UK Board Agency, which essentially every single African country is not on that list. So if you are an African that has studied in Africa, you would need to prove your English language proficiency. That is either through your letter stating from your university that your degree was completely taught in English and you will be waived, or you need to do an English language test, so either the TOEFL or IELTS. So if English is not your first language and you did a degree that was not completely taught in English, then you would need to go and do the TOEFL or IELTS. So these are stage deadlines. You are actually the first group of people to see these deadlines. They have not been published as yet, so they are still subject to change. They are very similar to what we had this year. So if you are very focused on funding, I would encourage you to apply in the first 3 stages where the vast majority of our funding is awarded. But other than that, places and offers are made equally, essentially, in each stage. And I don't mean equally by division of number. I mean equally in terms of if your profile is strong, you have equal opportunity of receiving an offer as if you applied in stage 1 or 3 or 4. We don't have a set number that goes through. So these are our scholarships available, and we can chat a bit more. These are all on our website. This is, again, just a very small snapshot of the scholarships, and these are the ones that are primarily dedicated to either Africans or those from emerging markets. So we have the Saïd Foundation Africa scholarships, which fund scholarships for African candidates. They range in partial to full, and we have the Oxford MBA Foundation scholarship. That is a new scholarship that is awarded to an African woman each year. It's a full scholarship, including living expenses. We have the Oxford Grace Lake Scholarship that is awarded to a Nigerian candidate each year. One that is notable is the Africa Dean Scholarship that is personally funded by the Dean and his wife each year and is awarded to an African candidate. All the other scholarships that you can see on your screen are not exclusive for African candidates, but as I mentioned, have a strong focus on supporting candidates from emerging markets. The SCOL scholarship does support those candidates that come from a background either with your own startup in a social venture or working towards a social issue over the last 3 years. As well as a number of different college scholarships that are available through the colleges for African candidates as well. I would encourage you to not let funding be your main barrier to applying, and our current students can have a chat about some of the scholarships if they received any. And I would, though, definitely encourage you to make the step to apply and then focus on the funding, as opposed to just assuming you would not have funding to be able to consider an MBA at Oxford. There are some loan opportunities. You could go through Prodigy Finance. There is the option to be company sponsored. If you are interested in exploring that opportunity, more than welcome to have a conversation with me, and we can talk you through how to put forward a business case to a company if you are looking to be company sponsored. And the Chevening Scholarship, which is completely independent of the business school or the university, but a number of our African candidates have received scholarships through the Chevening Foundation, which is a UK-led organisation. So we can come back to the funding, but I thought it would most probably be useful for us to turn over to our current students that can talk a little bit more about themselves, and then we can go through these list of questions. So as you hear from the students, please continue to send through questions, and we can then go through them individually. So I'll hand over to our students. We have Jihan. She'll just introduce herself, what she was doing before she did the MBA, and what she plans to do post-MBA.
Hi, I'm Jihan Abbas. Before the MBA program, I was running an insurtech company in Kenya. And I think obviously after the program, I'm going to go back to run my business and hopefully expand across Africa. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, my name is Seye Odukogbe. I'm Nigerian. Prior to the MBA, I worked primarily in infrastructure, transport infrastructure, advisory, and yeah. After the MBA, I'm going to go back to the industry, maybe infrastructure finance, and I also run a not-for-profit, so I will carry on doing that.
Okay. I'm Katherine, and I'm from South Africa. Prior to the MBA, I worked in the tech space in social enterprise, as well as starting my own social impact company that looked at helping people in areas in South Africa. And after the MBA, I think I'll first earn some money so I can pay back some loans and then go into the same space.
Perfect. So let's carry on with you, Katherine. Could you just give sort of your top highlight of the MBA program so far?
I mean, I think the highlight is definitely the people that you meet. And I love the fact that it's very Africa focused. There's 10%, right? I mean, 10% of the class is Africa focused, and there's a genuine interest in what Africa means in a business context globally. For example, we had the Africa conference, which was in March, and that looked at a whole lot of different aspects on Africa, particularly with the African Free Trade Agreement. So I think that was definitely a highlight. And just, yeah, the fact that is something that is encouraged and we get to explore.
Perfect. So Seye, what advice would you give to an African candidate, somebody who's listening right now, looking to apply for the MBA program?
My advice would be, you can just go for it, right? And what that means is take the first step to click on apply now and start your application. And I think there are several reasons you can say, you know what, I need to get this GMAT score, I need to get finance, I need to sort out several things, I need to leave my job and thinking about what you're gonna do after that. So apply first, but just like you're doing now and being on this call, getting more information to make a better informed decision. And that's the right thing to do. But I would say just if it's really what you want to do, and I'd certainly say do it, because the MBA for me, it's really gone beyond my initial plans, to be honest. So yeah, apply and do your research, but just really don't take too long, and yeah, go for it.
Perfect. So Jihan, a lot of people are asking us what are the sort of things that you can get involved in when you're on the program, more sort of extracurricular activities. Sort of what have been some of the things that you've got involved in your time here?
So I run the Oxford Business Network for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. You get the chance to run for this position in the first term, and it gives you such a great opportunity, especially if you're an entrepreneur, to meet so many people. You get so many opportunities. For example, last year I was able to go to this conference called Slush, which is the biggest startup convention in Europe, and we're able to get student tickets for about £100 when the ticket actually costs 2,000. You know, and that's a great opportunity to meet other startups, to meet investors. And also, I would say that the Oxford Union is something that everybody loves. You get to experience different opinions, and it kind of pushes you outside your boundaries of limitations of your thoughts. So sometimes, you know, you don't really realize why you really disagree with things, but it makes you really think about that. So it's been really great.
Perfect. So somebody's asking a question around colleges. Do you like your college? And what benefits do your colleges give for you?
Yeah, I really like my college, even though it wasn't my first choice of college. I wasn't given my first choice, but I think at the MBA level, it doesn't really matter so much, to be honest, because as at the MBA level, you do get to interact with other classmates from different colleges. You get to experience, college dinners as well. But also, regardless of the college you're a part of, you can get to take part in the activity. Except you're very particular about about something a particular college does. In my college, I'm part of Green Templeton College, which I think probably a quarter of the MBA is actually in. The benefits there are really, really, really quite a lot actually, because it's a graduate college. You get a grant of up to £1,000, which you can spend on field work or electives. So I was in South Africa in April as part of the Africa elective, which I would recommend you to do if you go on the MBA. And yeah, I was given £900 by the college, and I applied that for the trip. So, and there are other benefits as well. Just being part of the college, you have a tutor, you get to meet with other graduate students studying elsewhere. So yeah, basically, I like my college, and I think really you can still explore the colleges even if you're not a member.
Yeah. So we've got some questions around startup ideas. So you have all just recently gone through your entrepreneurship project. Yeah. So somebody is wanting to know whether it's possible to work on a startup idea, pitch to investors, raise funding. Who would like to give some insight into the entrepreneurship project?
I could.
Yeah.
So the entrepreneurship project, you basically get into teams of 5 and you come up with an entrepreneurship idea, business. And you spend about 3 months working on the business plan, pitch deck, and at the end of it, you basically pitch to VCs. VCs will come in, and then you'll be able to see whether your business idea is viable or not. But a lot of people actually pursue their entrepreneurship idea beyond entrepreneurship project beyond. So we have a company which is well known, Cedars in the UK. They started off as an entrepreneurship project, and now they're one of the biggest crowdfunding companies in the UK. So there's definitely opportunity to meet VCs. One of our professors here, Professor Hellman, is great with he focuses on entrepreneurial finance. So there's a lot of support, and there's also the Oxford Foundry and the Oxford Seed Fund, where you can apply for funding, £50,000. They invest annually. So there's definitely a lot of room for entrepreneurship, and for entrepreneurs to get their hands dirty.
Yeah, just to add to that, I'm actually working on, as part of my entrepreneurship project, an idea that I was working on before coming to the MBA, and I've made huge progress, since I've arrived there. So I'm using the EP entrepreneurship project as a way to fast track and really test different, different concepts. And yeah, I would, if you have an idea, I would, I advise that you consider pushing that forward. And you have other members, colleagues in the MBA with different skill set that can just contribute and help you. So yeah, there are a lot of opportunities being part of competitions as part of the entrepreneurship project, the McKinsey Venture Academy. We got to the semi-final. There's another round of SCORE Venture Award that we've applied for. And we have another application, another competition, which would put in for funding. So yeah, I would advise that if you have ideas, definitely the entrepreneurship project is a great idea. Jihan mentioned the Oxford Foundry as well. There are different avenues, to be honest, to explore and really hone on your ideas. Yeah.
So quite a few questions on scholarships for African candidates. Some of the questions around sort of what is the value and percentages, and as I had mentioned before, there's quite a range in terms of funding. So funding can be a partial scholarship, so around £10,000 generally is the minimum, right up to a full scholarship. Some of those scholarships will include living expenses and some don't, but for the vast majority, you should not at the very least bank on living expenses for the scholarship. So it generally goes towards tuition fees. And people are again asking around the scholarship, sort of the criteria for it. Some have very strict criteria in terms of you have to be from a sector or a country. But for the most part, the African dedicated ones, we're looking for people that represent the continent in a way that you're going to be a strong ambassador. You're looking to have a positive impact. You have strong leadership and communication skills. All those things that sort of tell us essentially that by us being able to support you, you'd continue to have impact and contribute to the growth on the continent. I don't know if you guys want to chat a brief thing about the scholarships. I know Seye, you got.
Yeah. So I have a part scholarship from the Jakob Foundation. It's a Swiss foundation. And my work, so I run a not-for-profit in Nigeria that work in rural communities, and the Jakob Foundation felt that aligned with what they do. So yeah, I was very privileged to really qualify for that, and I also have a scholarship from the annual alumni fund, which there's also a number of people on the in the cohort that qualify for that. So I'm very lucky to have that, and I think if you have the right. If you meet the right criteria, then you will be considered as well.
I was given a Saïd Foundation scholarship, which is a partial scholarship. And after I had received my letter to say that I had been given a place, I then automatically was given the scholarship, which is really helpful. And that goes specifically towards tuition.
And yourself, Jihan?
The same for me. I was also given the Seye Foundation scholarship. And I guess also for entrepreneurs, it's really helpful that you can see that the university understands what you do and appreciate the sacrifices that you make and actually compensate you for it, which is really, really great.
Yeah, perfect. So like I said, about 60 to 65% of our African students receive funding each year. So quite a significant proportion. There's quite a few questions around students with families, so kids, spouses, partners. How did they manage that? I don't believe everybody came with a partner, but Katherine, you could share your insights.
Yeah, so I'm married and I came across by myself. My husband actually joined me about a month ago. And what I think is true is that you make it work. It doesn't matter if your partner comes with you or doesn't, and you kind of rationalize how that works depending on your situation. So for me, it's wonderful to have my husband here, but actually it was all right having the first 2 terms just to really focus on the MBA and have him in a different country, because there is so much going on. And I know that there have been partners that not struggle, but it is you managing that expectation. So knowing when you arrive that there's so much going on and you can't give your partner the attention that they might need or deserve. So it's worked out pretty well for me, but I do know that there are other partners who have arrived like day one and it's also worked for them. And I know that people who have come across with kids have been given support from their colleges, and there's really cool communities that their kids hang out together, and they have a support network with that. So it's very, very doable. I would just say definitely manage your partner's expectation, because it is hard, either the distance or even having your partner here.
But also, I think some other people with partners, the partners are not just left outside the MBA. They are actually very much welcome. They get involved in pretty much a lot of activities as well. So,
and they also have the opportunity to join the colleges with them, so you can become an associate member of your college. So they're involved in everything.
Okay. So some people are chatting about sort of the career changes or transitioning. We've got sort of two very specific questions. One around, are there opportunities in and around Europe for internships for students? So I don't know if either or any of you doing any internships in Europe. Do you know your classmates?
Yeah, I mean, I found an internship in Europe that I'm actually not taking up in Madrid, and I think that there is a lot of opportunity through the Career Center, and I happen to find this opportunity through a link on the Career Center, and I looked at it through there. But there is a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, like I said, on the latest employment report, 57% of our students were working in Europe post MBA. So whether that links through internships or not. And for those looking to make a career change, how do you find with your classmates that are looking to do the career switch, whether it's industry or location? Have you seen their sort of journey?
I mean, I can speak for at least someone I know who sort of switched from more automotive engineering type to more strategy consulting, and that's worked out. And there are a number of people that are still exploring, to be honest. And some, I think, if you're switching to like consulting, it's probably easier compared to finance generally, and I think that's across anywhere. I'm sure there are some people, I can't really think of anyone I know.
There's people switching from accountants and stuff, switching to venture capital as well.
Of course. Yeah.
And one person that I know is just recently got a few interviews with some VCs, and the way he did it was he joined the Oxford Seed Fund. He was a director of the Seed Fund, and in the Seed Fund, you basically it's a student-led VC. Then you invest and you go through the entire process of making an investment in a company. So from that, he was able to leverage into getting interviews with VCs. So there's definitely opportunity for switching.
Yeah, and also there are other people that have switched into tech or out of tech into different complete sector or industry or even geography. So it really depends. I personally want to stay in my sector, but there's something completely different. So.
Okay, perfect. So a lot of questions on applications. So let's perhaps just go through all of these because there's quite a bit. So some of them is around undergraduate degrees, asking if you need a particular sort of field. The answer is no, we accept undergraduates from all kind of fields, all universities, and we will just convert your degree, because obviously there's different grading systems. We convert your degree into whatever that qualifies here in the UK, which our admissions team can do for you if you're uncertain. In terms of work experience, the average year's work experience that you each had. Do you want to rattle that off?
Mine was just 3 years.
Okay.
Maybe at the top end, 10 years.
Yeah, I'm 7.
There we go. So as you can see, such a broad spectrum between. So if you have, somebody's asking if they have just less than 2 years experience at the moment, by the time you apply, essentially, you have to have 2 years experience. Having said that, nobody would stop you from applying and you would still be considered. But going back to the point of what I said, your experience is really valuable for the rest of the class.
Absolutely.
And therefore, that is why we try and put on minimum requirements. But some people have perhaps done a master's degree or something additional, and therefore feel that now is the right time for them to do an MBA and to accelerate their career, which is absolutely fine as well. In terms of undergraduate degree results, if you have a lower undergraduate degree in terms of your result, that is where your GMAT can help compensate that. So somebody is asking specifically about how to compensate for a poor undergraduate degree. That could be one way. Or if you have perhaps done a master's degree and you've then done exceptionally well in your master's degree, that can also help compensate for a lower undergraduate degree. Somebody's asking around sort of your applications that you submitted. What do you feel were either the distinguishing factors for yourself, or what do you think helped contribute for you to get an offer on the program?
Okay, I'll start. So I think I wrote my essays. So what do you call them? The questions, the answers to the questions. Yeah. And the first time I wrote them, I got someone to read them for me, and the feedback I got was that I wasn't coming through, and to make myself really like come through in those. And I made the answers really personal and really related to my experience, my strengths, what I thought I could contribute, and how I thought that would fit into not only now, but what I wanted to ultimately achieve. And I think those two things, the fact that I was really clear in articulating why I thought I would be a good fit, what I would get from it, and what I would contribute in the future, I think those two things were good for me. Because I didn't come from, I don't have a good GMAT score or particularly good grades. So my experience kind of needed to shine through there.
For me, I think it was just being articulate around why I want to do the MBA. And I made it clear, my degree was engineering, so I'd not really done a lot of finance or accounting degree, and for where I'm going to and the entrepreneurial journey that I'm taking, those are very important subjects and skills to have. So one, I made it clear that I want to use that to really just compensate for that, but also upskill. And also my interest in Africa generally, working in the country, on the continent, on ground, and just having been part of that. I know that Oxford would really give me the skill set to be, a true leader. That was, I think, some of the things I remember from my application. Yeah.
For me, similar to Katherine and Seye, it was basically focusing on the reason why I chose Oxford, which is because of the entrepreneurship, the support that they give to entrepreneurs, which is really important to me. And also similar to Seye, the fact that I was definitely going to be going home and wanted to make a difference. I think definitely putting that in there, if that's what you want to do, is definitely going to be helpful.
Absolutely. A couple of questions on deadlines for applications. When does the application system open? So by the 1st of August, the new system will be open for the next intake. And then the first deadline, as was on the previous slides, will be in early September. So stage 1 is early September, stage 2 is early November, stage 3 early January, and stage 4 early April. Again, if you're focused on either scholarships or you are very particular about the college perhaps that you get into, I would encourage you to apply earlier. The essay topics have not yet been released. There is talk that they may stay the same, however, they could change. So I would say just monitor the website. You will receive an email because you're on the mailing list for this webinar, and we'll tell you all about the essay topics. I think we only have one more question available that we can take because we're a minute away from finishing. But there's some questions on the 1+1 program, so I thought just quickly summarize that. I know that you didn't do the 1+1, but just for those that don't know, the 1+1 is obviously where you do a master's through one of the different departments through the university, followed by the MBA. So essentially you get 2 years, 2 master's degrees from Oxford. The benefit is for those that are looking to do a specific subject area, so to do a deep dive in public policy or education or computer science, and then apply that within the business concept of the MBA. Do you guys just want to give a brief sort of insight on your interaction with the 1+1 students and perhaps what their perspective that they bring to the class?
I've only heard incredibly positive things. And also because the year is so short, it's fantastic to get another year where you can explore Oxford and have time to build relationships outside of the business school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think having some colleagues in the cohort that actually experienced Oxford, being year for year, contributes really positively to the general experience. And yes, I think in hindsight, maybe I should have done the 1+1. but that being said, it depends on really if you have the time, finance, and all that takes into consideration. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's somebody that asked a question on sort of the healthcare focus. That's absolutely a very good idea to do the 1+1. We've had a number of our candidates that have come through the healthcare sort of sector that do the 1+1, because obviously it gives you a bit more time to apply some of the theory that you learn and the practical sort of insights in the MBA. So I can't get to all the other questions, and we have a very long list. I'm really sorry, but our admissions team will make sure that we respond to these questions. So thank you so much. But if there's anything that you didn't have an opportunity to ask myself or the students, please email the MBA recruitment team. The email would have been on the one that we've emailed you about the webinar, and we'll make sure that we can answer any other questions that you have. But I'd encourage you all to really seriously consider Oxford. Don't let sort of the barriers that either are around GMAT or funding or the sort of opportunity for you to look at career opportunities, just really focus on sort of how the MBA can support you, take each step sort of as it comes, and really recognize that we are really supportive of ensuring that African candidates and highly skilled, highly talented African candidates do have the opportunity to come to Oxford and do an MBA. So I'd just like to thank my students for joining me out of their very busy MBA schedules. But yeah, thank you all so much for your time, and we look forward to continue this conversation with you all. Thank you.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Yeah.
All right.